Hey everybody, welcome back to my electronics workshop. So, I've got a piece of test equipment on the bench that I've had for quite some time. I bought this originally when I got into servicing as a hobby, servicing and repairing CB radios, just kind of as a fun thing. And well, I've serviced quite a few radios with this piece of equipment. It did end up developing some issues that weren't really that big of a deal. It was just some alignment stuff that I had to correct for on the test set itself. Mostly the frequency alignment, which I have now pretty much gotten squared away. So there is still some little inconsistencies. This isn't a very well documented piece of equipment. I have yet to find an official or any type of service manual or documentation for this thing. So let's talk about what this is. This is the Meguru M-E-G-U-R-O. It's a Japanese-made piece of equipment, proudly made in Tokyo. It's supposed to be a really, really nice piece of equipment. In fact, I've been extremely happy with it when I did do a significant amount of that CB radio related stuff. But now I have some different equipment that is significantly better, more modern for sure, but nevertheless, this is still a very, very good piece of equipment. I think I'm going to end up giving it a final cleanup, and I already gave it a little bit of a tune-up, but I'll show you in the video a few things that this still may have going on. It could probably benefit from some fresh capacitors because it is pretty old, but at this point it is unrestored. So let's kind of go over the functions of this unit, what each button, dial, and everything does on it. Let's start with right here. So this has the capabilities of doing 3 different channel groupings. So channel grouping A, which is going to be the black scale, does channel 1 through 30 for standard American spacing of AM of CB radio American standards as well. So then you have channel grouping B, which does channel 31 to 50. So channel 40 would be the limits of the US based FCC allotted CB radio spectrum. Anything above 40 is outside of that, but we do have 40 through 50, and then 50 it's topped out. So on the green grouping, I'll just rotate this around, they do a staggered stepping, so channels 2, 3, 12, 14, 23, 25, 32, 33, 38, 40, 48, and 49. I'm not 100% sure on why they stagger that like that, but it's most likely for the alignment procedures where you just have to tick it over one to check to see how evenly set up your channel stability is and how well it's aligned. I would assume that that's what that's about, but for all intents and purposes, most of the time you're just using scale A and scale B. So we'll go ahead and take this back to scale A, and I'm going to center it on channel 19 because everybody knows channel 19. Next set of buttons and dials and diddly-doops we have here. So external monitor capabilities at 600 ohms, so you could connect a microphone to the banana ports on here to kind of modulate your own signal. You can add your own signal generator into this, like say using an external audio generator, whatever. That would work fine. Keeping in mind the 600 ohm, which is pretty standard to a lot of the hand microphones, the dynamic style hand mics, and then you would put that on the external setting here. It does have an off to turn the modulation off. You also have a 0.3 kilohertz, which is 300 hertz, 1 kilohertz and 3 kilohertz generator built into this device, so you can generate those signals, which is super handy. You can also set your modulation AM level manually, so you can turn this up or down using the meter over here. to set your, how much modulation do you want. Fixed, you would have a calibrated 30% modulation. So with this off and this set, you would set this to 30 on the meter, and you got that calibrated. So that's user accessible calibrations. All right, let's look at the carrier mode. So you have a negative 1 kilohertz, center, positive 1 kilohertz, or your veneer, which would then be this up here, and then you would manually do that yourself. That's mostly the way that I ran this, because I found that the internal carrying modes weren't quite lining up where I wanted them to. I was working on some sideband radios, and I found that this was almost a must, where I'd set this to be center, 0 beat it, and that's how I would align sideband radios with an AM generator. So with no modulation, set the veneer, make sure I really got it on spot on perfect to 0, and then do my upper and lower sideband alignments from there. And then adding the 1 kilohertz to see, okay, how pure does 1 kilohertz sound on upper and lower. And that's how you can kind of get around not having specifically something designed for sideband alignments. That's one way of doing it. You also have an output. So output in dB, this is relative. This isn't really calibrated to any type of a standard that I'm aware of. Could be wrong, but if there's some documentation in a service manual for this, that would shed a little more light on it. You have your carrier and modulation switch here for the meter. So you could set your carrier level, which you want in the red, to set to that center point, which is right about there. I can zoom in on that and I'll show you. Yeah, so you can see that there's just that carrier and there's just a little bit of a tick. So I'm going to go ahead and click that on and show you that I've already pre-adjusted that. Camera's a little slightly off, but it is, to my eye, if I'm looking dead on to it, it is dead center. So that's how that works. I suppose while we're zoomed in, I'm going to go ahead and we can check our modulation. So I'll set 1 kilohertz, and we're set to 30, which is exactly where it should be. Now I'm going to take control of it manually, and it'll drop to 0. And we have 20%, 30%, 40%, 50, 60, 70, 80, etc., all the way up to 100 and plus. So normally you just leave it set on the fixed side of the scale, and that gets you the right amount of modulation for really adjusting things in. So all right, so that's pretty much it for all of the functions. What we're going to go ahead and do now is we're going to readjust the camera slightly. Apologize for that, but it's kind of necessary. So I do have this hooked up to the Freedom R8100, which is a communications analyzer. It's very much capable of a lot of things. You can do some duplexer tuning, filter checking, radio sensitivity, receiver sensitivity, transmitter. It is like a service center in a box type of thing. It's really, really nice. It's a software device, so you can unlock extra modes. This one has a few of them unlocked, but there's a few more, and they're awfully expensive for software. You buy it not for the hardware, you buy it because of the software. So this has capabilities of doing digital modes other than just FM. So NXDN, P25, DMR, the list goes on. It has a bunch of capabilities. I'll do a little more in-depth on this particular unit at some point, but not right now. So, but this is what we're going to be using as our standard, since the calibration on this one is still, I feel, probably about as accurate it's going to get, at least in my workshop, until I finally scrape up some cash to maybe send this in and have it certified, and also deal with one particular problem I found with it. So anyway, so we got this hooked up. I've got it on the 0 dBm max antenna port. And let's go ahead and connect it to the Meguru. And we can see that there is a slight spike here, kind of bouncing. It's kind of hard to see, but that's set to 0 dB on the scale. Let's bring this up until we get to maybe, what, negative 100 dBm, which is right about, I don't know, pretty much there. So, and there's 20. Let's take this on the other one up to, what, negative, there we go. We just opened up the squelch at negative 72-ish. So let's go ahead and just run this at negative 70 dBm. So this output scale doesn't really align to anything that I understand. We'll turn off the tone generator. It doesn't really align to anything that I understand. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I guess that doesn't really necessarily matter. It's more of a, you're setting, you're using that for setting up your receiver sensitivity and throughout the channel spacing. So that's possibly how they're doing it, but there isn't much documentation. It just output in dB. So it's in reference to something. What it is, I do not know. This isn't a transmit into test set. It does have some protection built into it. The attenuator, the attention light will turn on with an external input of 300 milliwatts. You really don't want to transmit into this. That's a big no-no. So you have to be extremely careful to not do so. It does have some protection, but it's still not good to transmit into it. So, all right. Well, let's take a look and see how close we are on frequency. So I'm going to just go ahead and click the center button here. And it is showing a frequency error of 0.1415 kilohertz, so about 150 hertz. It's not not great, but it's not the worst. I mean, for AM, nobody would really notice that. Let's do negative 1 kilohertz, and we're 1 point, yeah, so we're actually pretty darn close to that. 1.18 kilohertz negative, and then we'll go positive, and we're at 0.85 kilohertz. So it's pretty close if you kind of use the math between it. I don't really use it for the carrier mode centering and all that stuff here. I usually just leave it on the veneer, and then I will use the veneer to set my 0, which is right about there. And now we're looking at 2 hertz, and it is incredibly stable, believe it or not. Let's have a look and see how accurate the AM modulation is. So let's go ahead and set 1 kilohertz again. All right, it's showing 32%, which is well within what I would classify as being within spec. What else can we look at here? I think that's about it. We can use this to vary it around, and we can see how close we are. So let's go positive 5. So positive 5 kilohertz on here is just slightly under. So that's fine. I mean, it would be great if it was perfect, but we're working with analog here, everybody. And it's slightly shifted, so, and there's negative 5, and that's pretty darn close. So, and now we're into the hertz again. Let's get that beautifully centered at 1 hertz right there. 0 to 1 hertz. I mean, this thing is incredibly stable. You may have to use a piece of equipment to kind of make sure that your veneer frequency deal is set correctly. I would probably almost recommend using a frequency counter above this with a whole bunch of zeros to make sure that this piece of equipment is locked on a certain frequency so that you can do the alignment with much better accuracy. So that's about it. That's what I used. I just used an old I believe I used an older frequency counter. Didn't have quite enough zeros, but since then I have grown up quite a bit in the test equipment side of the scale. So yeah, here it is. This is the Meguru MSG, not monosodium glutamate, 2282A. It is an incredibly interesting and pretty much can't find any documentation on it. Luckily, most of the adjustments internally are pretty well labeled. There's a few that you just have to use your best guess and go, okay, well this is in that circuit, and that's obviously for a VFO of sorts, and setting your upper and lower limits. So as long as you kind of know what you're looking at, you can pretty much figure it out. But as for running this machine, incredibly intuitive. It's set your channel, set your modulation, set your fixed limit or adjust it manually, set your output level, and adjust if you need to get it centered, and there you go. I mean, it is awesome. This would be I used this quite a bit for aligning receivers to get them, on frequency, and then to also set their sensitivity, which was the biggest thing that I liked about this, was using it to set up receiver sensitivity to really absolutely just get as much receiving out of it as I possibly can, and that is where this thing did most of the work for me. So cool. I hope you guys enjoy these nerdy videos that I produce, and if you do, hit that like and subscribe button. Always appreciate it. If you have any interest in particular things, go ahead and drop me a comment and let me know. If you have a source for the service manual and or documentation specifically for the MSG-2282A, let me know where I can get it. I'd be willing to purchase it, assuming it's not crazy over the top, like nutty expensive. Preferably I'd like the original documentation, meaning from the actual company that made this, in decent enough shape. But if there's reproductions out there and that production is done well with the schematic, that would be handy, because if and when I decide to recap this unit, that'll become very handy for that process, for any service and troubleshooting that may be required. So awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. Always enjoy the comments, and yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if you want to see more things like test equipment, both new and old. Drop me a line. All right, everybody. 7-3. Have a great day, great night, wherever you are, and we'll catch you again.